Our lives are a string of insights, flashes of inspiration that can be the catalyst for new ideas. However, our pace of life these days means we tend to miss some of them completely. I'm Dave Hill, and I'm the host of the Simple Reflections podcast, a fortnightly series of interviews with people from all walks of life. Our conversations are an invitation to reflect on some of the simple insights my guests have had that have gone on to have a profound impact on their lives. So grab a cuppa and a biscuit, join us, slow down for a little while and see what shows up for you. Well, welcome to the next episode of the Simple Reflections podcast. Today, I'm excited to be joined by a good friend called Tony Power. I may call him Tony, I may call him Ant, I might call him Anthony, I might call him Austin. There's a whole load of names that I've known him over the years, so I apologise for that. And he'll probably call me all kinds of other things in return. So again, don't be alarmed by that. I've known Tony for about 23 years. We worked together in the army. He was a rifleman in my first platoon, and we've worked in Northern Ireland, Sierra Leone, and Blackpool, of all places. And since he left the army, we've stayed in touch, and over the years, our paths have crossed a number of times. But it was Tony that started my journey looking into the three principles. He got in touch when he was in a fair amount of distress about 10 years ago, and put his faith in phoning me. And I put my faith in not knowing the answer and going, okay, let's see what we can do together, and see where that takes us. And over the years of doing that, I got introduced to the principles and thought, wow, there's something exciting here that could be of help for Tony and other veterans like him that are struggling with all kinds of things. And yeah, that's got me to creating this podcast. So I thought it would be really interesting to have him on today and see how things are going. So Tony, welcome. It's lovely to see you. Lovely to be here with you today. How are things going? How's life at the moment?
Yeah, it's it's just life, isn't it? We go through these cycles of, we're up, we're down, we're but at the moment, things are going well. Obviously I'm still learning every day, so it's just good.
Doing your thing. Perfect. Just thinking back to the phone call that you made 10 years ago saying, hi, help. I just wondered how you were potentially feeling in that moment, if you can remember, that led you to making that call. And if you found that the whole idea of opening that door helpful.
I'll be honest, at the time I wasn't really sure, other than just I needed to speak to a familiar voice or speak to a familiar person about what was happening with me, and to try and give me some sort of I wouldn't say answers, but just wasn't sure at the time in the situation I was in, so I just kind of thought, well, I'll give my platoon commander a shout. If there was ever a problem when we were in, that's who we'd go and speak to. That was kind of why I decided to make that phone call, really. I was just completely lost in the sense I didn't know what was happening with me and what was going on. So, that was my reason for calling.
Okay. And once you'd made that call, how did you feel after that? Did it feel like there was an element of relief, or were you just still floundering around going, okay, that's that done? What was the sort of next element for you?
It was a relief in a way, because I'd been wanting to speak to somebody, that I could almost relate to in a way, because obviously we were on the same tour and stuff. So it was a relief having spoken to you. But then obviously after that, I was just like, right, where do I where do I go now? What do I do now? Because obviously at the time, I think I was in the crux of the NHS, and I think I had been sectioned prior to making that phone call to you. So I'd basically been discharged from hospital. And then it was then I started seeking help from, I think it was Help for Heroes at the time. So then I'd kind of arranged, I think, to meet you and Goldie, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I think that was the first time I'd seen you, because you were based in Tidworth at the time, weren't you?
Yes, yeah, Bulford.
Yeah. And I came to your house for dinner.
Yeah.
Yeah, that for me was the most overwhelming experience of my. I remember sitting at the dinner table with your wife and your two children, and yeah, it's just insane. And then obviously I sat in the lounge and I just kept feeling so overwhelmed with what was going on. But at the same time, relieved that I'd sort of gotten someone back in my life that I had that connection with, if you know what I mean, in that way. Yeah.
It's nuts, isn't it? You know, it feels like a long, long time ago, and I'm sure bits of it feel really, really close by too at times.
Oh God, yeah. I remember sitting in that lounge. I think I was holding on to a teddy bear or something. I can't remember what it was you gave me to try. Yeah, I think so. You would say, like, just hold on to this. I'm just going upstairs quick.
Yeah. I still have a house full of teddy bears, even though the girls are now teenagers. So yeah, there's always a teddy somewhere close by.
Yeah, I just remember feeling really emotional. I mean, at the beginning stages of that journey, at that point, I was quite emotional about everything, because I think I'd just caged everything up for so long, trying to deal with it in my own way, or just the way that that I was trying to deal with it, if you know what I mean. Based on what I was faced with each day, and each day was different. It wasn't, every day wasn't the same. Some days I'd go weeks and days and weeks without any symptoms, and I'd be like, "Oh, this is okay. I'm fine now. I'm okay." And then I'd have days and days of just not being okay, and I just was in that cycle for a long time, I guess. And until obviously then, until I was sectioned, and at that point, and then hospitalised, and then it kind of dawned on me like, maybe I do need some help here. It's manifested itself into a bit of a storm in a teacup sort of thing,
Yeah, well, your story's not unique, unfortunately. No. We have a tendency to try and deal with things on our own, and interestingly, we're designed to do that. We are designed to be able to thrive and cope with stuff. But sometimes if we don't fully understand the working mechanics of all of that, we can potentially grab hold of something that feels like it's working because we're seeing the evidence of that. But at the end of the day, potentially might be creating more of a problem for ourselves, but completely innocently. You were doing what looked like the best thing that you could do at that moment. And you are not alone in that. We're all doing that moment to moment.
Yeah, absolutely. So I can see kind of like, I guess at the beginning stages, it wasn't, I'm saying it was working out, but it wasn't working out. And, you just try and sort of muddle through, don't you? In the hope that you can try and figure this thing out. But the more I tried to figure it out, the less I figured it out, basically. Do you know what I mean? It was just, it wasn't what I was doing at the time. Wasn't working. Some things were, some things weren't, but I still couldn't quite understand the things that did help and the things that didn't help. And, until then, obviously I started getting medical intervention and then started to understand why things were happening to me, because I didn't quite understand what was going on at the time.
Cool. Well, there's that it's probably a good thing to point out, that the fact that you were being cared for by the NHS and various organisations throughout our conversations, and that there was never an either or one thing's better than the other. It was, here are some things in my life that are helpful, and let's see where they go, and they don't clash at all, really, because there's been times where you've had quite a lot of medication, and there have been times when there's been less of it, and you've been, cracking on and living comfortably. And that's gone up and down. That journey's gone up and down for you, and that's, I think, what's been really exciting to witness on that journey is the more you've got comfortable with the fact that that comes and goes, and that sometimes you need to lean on it and sometimes you don't. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's been really, really heartening to see, because it's been something that I've been able to share with other people that are going through similar stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's that. I guess that point is really important, because I think with all the intervention I had from the NHS and stuff, and all the different therapies I did, and the one therapy I think I stuck out was EMDR, because it was kind of less intrusive at home. It was more intrusive when you're in the session, but then obviously when you're out of session, you can just not forget about it, but you don't have to necessarily do any work around it. Whereas CBT was just like, you have to, you do stuff in sessions, you have to do stuff at home, and it was that cycle I didn't enjoy. But I went through that process, and it helped. The story from start to finish was a bit of a mess prior to that. I was seeing bits of it, not all of it, confused over this and confused over that. And so the EMDR just almost tidied that all up, it neatened it up a bit. It didn't mean the story was gone, because I think initially I thought, they're going to take it away. No, that's not how it works. We'll just order it and make you see it in its entirety. And so that's what that did. It made it see it in its entirety. And I had the story from start to finish, as opposed to just like bits of it. And it didn't help it. Yes, it helped, and it didn't. A bit of a double-edged sword, because my mind was opened up to the whole experience, the emotions, everything that went with it at the time. Because before, I'd feel different emotions, feel differently at different periods for it, but I was never consistent with it. But then, once I did the EMDR, it processed all that, and then I could see the whole puzzle. It's like this puzzle that's missing so many different pieces. And what they managed to do is just go and hunt for those little bits that were missing and put them all back in place. So then it wasn't just coming at me randomly. It was there in my head in one big piece. I could see it visually, like, wow, okay. But I guess that helped, and that helped to process a lot of the trauma, as in, like, the incident at the time. It helped me process all of that. And then I guess what I was left with then was just trying to figure out the rest of the stuff. Like you mentioned, the things that have been helpful, like the things, and things still crop up. It doesn't mean it hasn't gone, but I still visually see things. I have nightmares. I still get like anxiety, panic attacks, and things like that. But I guess now the NHS helped me process the trauma. But I guess with the 3 principles, it's helped me live with it better, if you know what I mean. Manage it better, because I think, I spoke to you about an incident where I just see this guy walking around me the whole time. But if I hadn't sort of like 3 principles and haven't discussed it with you, I 100% knew I'd ended up back in hospital, because that's what's happened every single time up until that point, like the first incident I had when I was in the house and I had a flashback, and then he stood in the kitchen with me. I ended up in hospital. That's when I was initially sectioned. And then 2 or 3 other occasions after that, it's happened again, and I've ended up back in hospital. So whereas now I can just go, oh, okay, it's that again, as opposed to, holy shit, it's that again. I'm taking more of a, yeah, sweet, okay, you're hanging around for a bit. I know you won't be here for long, because you tend to hang around for a few days, maybe a week, and then you'll be gone. And so because of that, that seems to be the pattern I'm in at the moment. So it doesn't stop me from doing anything. It just allows me to carry on with my life, if you know what I mean. Even when I'm at work and doing my thing, it still happens, but I'm still able to carry on with my life and not let that interfere with it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, well,
that's been the most.
Sorry, go on.
No, you go.
I was just going to say that that has been the most wonderful thing to witness from my perspective is the speed at which you now catch on to things from where you were. So sometimes you would have an experience and then 2 or 3 months down the line, you go, this has been going on for 3 months and I don't, and I don't know why. And get yourself, you were all tied up in knots about it. And we just sort of gently, okay, well, how true is it? Is there any danger of any of that? And as soon as you calm down, oh, okay, that's the same thing again, isn't it? Different story, same caught in the cycle of it. And I think what's been wonderful to see is the amount of time you spend caught up has got way, way smaller, to the point I think, you're doing it all the time now on a daily basis, but when something big crops up, it may be 1 or 2 days, and you're no longer phoning me to say help. You're now phoning up to say, I've just done this, and there's a huge amount of joy and gratitude in yourself when you're on the phone of, check me out. I'm thriving. I got a little bit caught in it, but I saw it for what it was, and I'm now through the other side. Thank you. And I just wanted to let you know. So now it's no longer help, please. It's this is what's been going on. This is where I am with it. I'm doing fine, thanks. And that's been really cool, because that's what I've known to be true for you ever since I started learning about the principles. And it's what I knew and know to be true for all the veterans that I speak to, whether they are aware of it or not. And it's when that light bulb comes on and people go, oh, wow, yeah, I am okay. That's just something I'm creating at the moment. It's not going to be around forever. It will pass. And as you say, you're able to live more comfortably with it. It doesn't stop it, just allows you to live more comfortably.
Yeah, that's what it's done. Yeah, and that's been the biggest thing for me, because not living comfortably with it has led to hospitalizations. It's led to time off work. It's led to just, not being like who I want to be, as opposed to what I'm getting caught up in, knowing that I don't necessarily need to be caught up in that, because it's just something that's going on in my head and I'm thinking, so it's just a cycle you get stuck in. And it's not to say I don't get stuck in a cycle still, I still do, but I spend less time now in those cycles, as opposed to, trying to focus on the stuff that is, now, like I said to you before, I've started using it in my everyday life. Now, there's still a few areas that I'm exploring, health-wise, I've explored that. Work-wise, I've used it. And family-wise, I've not even touched on that yet. So that's kind of like an angle, like we spoke in the car about how I reacted to Sarah and me reading it wrong and not quite understanding. And then, my reaction at times towards things, that's what I need to, that's another thing. I haven't even delved into that yet. So
that's okay. Like you were saying at the beginning, it's, this is all about learning, and we're learning all the time. And so knowing that there are some blind spots at the moment, well, that's good to know. When we're driving a car and we're reverse parking, there are blind spots. When people are overtaking us, we know they're going to disappear out of sight.
Yeah.
Just because I could see a car and it's now no longer visible doesn't mean to say that it's not there. It's just in a blind spot at the moment. And knowing that these things exist for us, and they always will, we're going to catch on to them at times, and we're going to see into them. We're going to have an insight around how we might see that differently. Brilliant. But that will probably uncover other stuff that we haven't delved into yet. But it's been interesting, it's been interesting hearing you just notice things differently at work, not because you've been actively thinking about, right, okay, so how might the principles help me in this situation? You've just noticed that at times work goes more smoothly when your mind is clear. And the same with, what I expect, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I expect whenever you're now seeing things that are running smoothly, it's because you've got a clear mind about it.
Yeah.
And just because we haven't got a clear mind about something doesn't mean to say there's a problem. It's just saying there's room to learn here, and that rather than then being, oh my goodness, what's missing, it's okay. Oh wow, okay, what is there that I'm not seeing here? My curiosity kicks in, and we start becoming more creative about how we see things. And as you say, everyone is going to get caught up from time to time. It's part of being a human being.
Yeah.
If we know we're living from one thought to the next, some of those thoughts are going to get sticky. So we've just had a little technical hitch. So we're going to be re-kicking in, having lost connection. So if there's a disjointed element to this episode, we apologise for that, but we'll sort it out. So given that you and I have been exploring the three principles together now, probably side by side for about 6 years, me more than you sort of dipping your toe in every now and again. What would you say you've noticed most that's different today than it was before you understood how our experience is created?
I guess I'm just noticing things, as in noticing that I don't need to be stuck in these cycles for as long as I used to be. And actually, just that side of it has been huge, I think. Because, like you mentioned before, I could get stuck in a cycle for months, weeks and months at times. Not knowing, but knowing how to get out of it, if you know what I mean. I had the power, but I just didn't quite know, where to go with it, I guess. And now I can just take that step back and just go, oh, okay, it's that again. It's as opposed to, really getting myself down about it and getting stuck in I used to ruminate a lot over things that, and again, when I say ruminate, that's me just going over and over the same thought in my head. And then but now I know I don't have to do that. I can, it's still there, but I just don't have to pay too much attention to it like I used to before. Now I can just go, oh, okay, it's that again. And sometimes I do get stuck, depends how it affects me emotionally, because, that seems to be a big thing for me at the moment. If it really affects me emotionally, then I might get stuck in it for a bit longer. But I've also noticed that as well, and I'm not going to beat myself up about that. So I'm just going like, okay, this has really affected me emotionally. I might have had a cry about it. So just bear in mind, this might hang around for a bit, and that's what tends to happen as well. I tick, don't I? I just go through periods of ticking and verbally shouting things out. And I used to get really hung up about that going into public and stuff, knowing that this was going on. But now I just go, is what it is. I can't control it. But by doing that, it doesn't hang around for long again.
Yeah. I remember when you first brought that up as something that was going on. Amusingly, the thing that you were telling everybody was, you're boring. So we'd be chatting away and you go, you're boring. Okay, I get it. I know I'm boring. You've known that for a long time. But we were able to have a laugh about that.
Yeah, that's the key thing.
Take the edge off it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, because I think in a military environment, that's what we used to do, right? We used to have a bit of banter around it, and that used to really just soften it a bit,
Mm-hmm.
And I think the military humour is great, It has this way of just being able to, and I think that's part of the reason why when I am in a bad place, or I'll phone you, I'll phone Sylvie, or I'll get on the phone to someone else, and, and depending on what sort of conversation I need,
Mm-hmm.
if I could just do a bit of a serious chat, then I'll phone the boss, and yes, we'll have a laugh about things as well. But at the same time, I know that the conversation is like, we can get to the bottom of it type thing. And it's not to say that Sylvie doesn't do that. Sylvie does that as well. But in another place, I might just phone him for that reason, because I'm just going to get absolute crap off him. And I know that. So you just, he doesn't hold back, does he?
Nope. No, there's no prisoners with Sylvie.
So that's kind of like the reason why I phone certain people at certain times. And again, I used to feel guilty about that, right? I used to feel guilty, and I think to myself, "Oh, I haven't phoned the boss this time. Maybe he's going to feel bad or whatever." But now I just think to myself, "Well, that's a thought in your head, mate. That's a thought in your head, and it doesn't matter. You just phone whoever you need to phone to get you through this period of whatever's going on, you know."
Mm-hmm.
And I have phoned Sylvie and had a serious conversation, believe it or not. So,
oh yeah, he can be serious, but he can also completely cut you down.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, and it's great, you know. Me and Tom cut him down yesterday, though, to be quite fair. So,
must have been
I was building a loft hatch, and Tomo sent me a message saying, "Is that for Sylvie? Are you working for Sylvie? Because it was quite a big hole I made." And I replied and said, "No, it's not big enough." And then Sylvie sent back like a cry emoji, like is what I said. But you know, that was the level of conversation yesterday. But you know, and that's sometimes you need that. You know, I think when you've been in those environments where you do get that and you feed off it, and it helps you, then like you said, you said before, familiarity sometimes is what's needed, and that's hence why I reached out to you the first time, because I just needed that familiarity, you know.
Mm-hmm. And it's an interesting thing, isn't it? You know, that the familiarity you're talking about there is re-establishing a connection with people that you know. But interestingly, there are other people that find familiarity in reaching out to people that have a similar background. There's the familiarity.
Yeah.
The power in it all comes from the connection, that human to human bit. And that's what that's what I'm so excited about in understanding this, sharing this, is that while at times people will feel they have a need for a certain type of connection, that's brilliant. Let's use that let's open the door from there. Let's use that as the entry point. But actually from there, the world's your oyster, because there are billions of us on this planet. And we all work the same way, and we all have the capacity to connect to each other. Whether we believe that or not, we can create a whole load of thought about why we can't connect with certain people, or certain people, let's put it that way. But that's us just creating a block to keep us safe, because we might be worried about something or one thing or another, or because we think it'll be people who will look on it disapprovingly, and we're worried about judgment. But actually, we can connect with anybody, and that's what's got me doing all of the stuff that I'm doing these days, is trying to help join those dots, get people comfortable connecting, because it's in that moment of humanity that we're able to cut through the content of what's potentially going on for someone and have some fun despite it. And when there's a bit of fun and humor involved, it doesn't have to be, but when there's a bit of fun and humor involved, people's spirits tend to rise a little bit, and they become more curious, they become more open, they become less attached to the difficult thinking they have in that moment. And it just shifts the playing field slightly, and normally in our favor.
Yeah, I do notice that. I mean, it's been tricky, I guess, establishing new relationships since, I guess when you worked in an environment like the military, it's a very, everyone's a team, everyone works towards helping each other. And the one thing I've seen since I've come out a bit is people work against each other, as opposed to for each other, I guess. It's but then you could have come across people that haven't been that way. Do you know what I mean? So it's just noticing different ways in which people work. And I think we discussed before about even customers, like, because obviously I'm self-employed, and even dealing with customers, I've used the 3 principles in that sense, as well, dealing with them and how I manage them, and and their expectations and things like that. Because I think we had a conversation over that, didn't we? And I wasn't sure how to. And you were saying to them, well, give them options, give them that option, So I've been given the customers that option, and some will go with 1, 2, or 3. They won't necessarily go with just one option. But if you just lay it all on the table and say, look, this is what I can offer, these are the options. And, they'll choose one of those 3, but people like choice, don't they? People like to make a decision, that's opened things up again for work-wise. So I can have more open conversations with customers when I go to see them.
Yeah. No, that's
as opposed
cool.
to worrying about what they're going to think about what I'm saying. I'm just going to go, well, no, I'm just going to say these 3 things. Yeah. And you decide which way you want to go with it. Yeah.
Yeah. Because, the reason that conversation started in the first place is they want something that they can't create for themselves, and they need your skills. So that's why they've got in touch in the first place. They've got a concern about potentially their budget. You've got a concern about whether you can do things for their budget to the level that they want them achieved. And by being completely open about options for them, it creates clarity for both sides. They're not thinking, oh, he's trying to rip me off. You're not thinking, have I overpriced or underpriced this? And, am I going to get the work? You're going, right, here we go. Here's the buffet, take your pick. Yeah. And if it's not me, that's cool. See you later.
Absolutely.
And it frees up the whole conversation because you're more clear, you're more comfortable in your own skin having that conversation, and they'll pick up on that because it comes back to that human connection piece where, being tribal, we tend to look to each other to see whether there's danger, there's something to be anxious or worried about, or whether this is a good thing. We pick
up fright or flight, isn't it?
We pick up on those cues, but it's what we're designed to do. It's what we're designed to do. And when you understand that is happening for everybody all the time, and working out how best to navigate our own responses, thinking that someone else is in their own reality hearing this conversation, well, we can be more gentle with it, more curious about it, and go, oh, okay, right, sorry, I misunderstood that. What about this as an idea? And people go, oh, okay, cool. I see where you're coming from. Okay, no, off we go. And I think that's that's a wonderful lesson for everything. And again, the more curious we are about how that works for everybody, the more we'll see it in all aspects of our life and the lives of others. And
that's it, isn't it? It's just and it stopped me from overthinking about things work-wise, in terms of how I price it, how I don't price it, what I say, what I don't say. I now know what to say, and I know then off the basis of that, they'll either tell me what they want, or I'll pick up on it and know that's what they want. So then I'll go home, sit down, write my quote, send it off, fully that's what that's done there. It's just sort of like opened up a little bit of and for me as well, because I'm not then worrying or thinking like, oh, I don't really know what they want, and they don't really know what they're going to get from me. So, can I have that conversation? Oh yeah, I can. Yeah, it's okay. Yeah. So, so that's just, that's cleared up a lot of that, to be honest.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Right, I've got one final question for you before we wrap up. Given that you've been on a journey for your whole life, which has had twists and turns and ups and downs and some really tricky bits and some really glorious bits, but given what you've known more recently, let's say in the last 5 or 6 years, is there any sort of final thoughts you might want to leave for veterans or anybody really that's caught up in their own minds at the moment and are unsure what to do, where to go? Is there anything that you might suggest that could be helpful? from your
just
experience?
just find that one thing. It's not easy. Just find that one thing that works for you. You know, I think that was my main thing when I first started out trying to get help. It wasn't one size fits all, because sometimes we get stuck in this rut of, oh, well, that's it then. If they can't help me, then there's nothing I can do. And you know, having gone to my GP probably 3 or 4 times before, you know, and I did get knocked back, you know, a few times, because all they wanted to do is, you know, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but they just don't really want to talk to you and understand the system's busy and whatever, but they just want to shove tablets under your face. And that's kind of like their answer to it. And that can be the answer, because I'm still on medication. So for me, that works. It has its place. Everything has its place. And you might need to dip your toe into quite a lot of areas and use a lot of things, like I've done. I've dipped my toe into various different therapy sessions. I've now dipped my toe into the 3 principles. But there's always something or someone that you can talk to. You know, that's the one thing I will say, is that, you know, we've lost too many people from that, from not reaching out, from maybe reaching out and then getting knocked back. And I know it's not easy taking that knock. But there is other avenues to go down, you know. And those thoughts of harming yourself or killing yourself, they are just thoughts. That is all they are. You know, that's one thing I have learned, is it's all just thought, you know, and it's whether or not you pay attention to that thought, or whether or not you know, think to yourself, well, actually, I'm going to pick up the phone and speak to my boss. I'm going to pick up the phone and speak to my mucker Sylvie or Coops or Tomo or, you know, whoever that might be at the time, you know. There's always options. There's never just, well, that's it. You know, I'm stuffed now. I'm in this place and I'm in it for life, and there's no way out. And there's always a way out. Even when you're stuck in the most horrible places, there's always a way out, you know? You know, you dug yourself the biggest hole in the world that you think to yourself, well, I'm not going to get out of this. You know, there's no way out for me now, you know? And then obviously, you know, the unfortunate happens to some, but it doesn't have to be that way. You know, you have that choice. You can make that choice for it not to be that way. I'll give you an example. I mean, I stopped recently on a bridge. Someone was trying to, at the time I thought they'd broken down. So I was going over a bypass, and this was a typical example of what I was just talking about. And, you know, I drove past underneath the bypass and I thought to myself, is he broken down or what's he doing? He's sitting on the edge of the bridge here. So I thought, well, I'll go back. If he's broken down, then he's waiting for the AA or something like that. And I pulled up behind him, and instantly I got, don't come anywhere near me. So I was like, oh, okay, so he is trying to jump off the bridge. So then, you know, I stood away from him for a period of time, and then realized I needed to try and get him back over that barrier. You know, he was at that point. He was right there. That was it. He had reached that point where he was set on the edge of that bridge, and he was going to jump off. I managed to get myself a little bit closer. And then when I got closer to him, I did use a bit of humor. And I said to him, look, do me a favor. Can you just get this side? Because I don't fancy picking you up off the road below. You know? And he looked at me like with a shock face, but then he laughed. And then I instantly knew that I've got him. And then he came back the other side of the bridge, and then we just stood there talking. And we were talking about all this stuff, you know. And I was telling him about my journey and where I've been. And yes, I've been at that point where I've wanted to commit suicide. But I said, today you've been at that point, but you haven't done it. So I said, take this into the next steps of your recovery, whatever it is you try and do. I mean, the police turned up, because obviously I'd phoned the police and they took over, you know, after a period of time. But, you know, before they arrived, I was just talking to him about, you know, sitting here on the edge of this bridge doesn't mean you have to throw yourself off it. You could be at that point where you're thinking, that's it, I'm done. But there's still a comeback from that. You know, there is still a comeback from sitting on the edge of that bridge, wanting to jump off. You know, there is always an answer not to do it. You know, it's just not to. It's just knowing that you've got options, and there's plenty of avenues out there. They might not know all the avenues, but it's just then knowing. You know, it happens a lot with us, doesn't it? Like, we'll often get calls, won't we? And I'll phone you and say, like this week, for argument's sake, been struggling. So, and he's in a bit of a bad place. He has been for some time, and we've all spoken to him over the time and years. But he deep down knows he's got choices, because he's making a choice to speak to people.
Mm-hmm.
He's making a choice to speak to Dan. He was making a choice to speak to me, Tomo, and then I got on the phone to you. And it's sort of that's what happens, and that's what can happen. There's always someone or something, because that seems to be the biggest thing at the moment, isn't it? It's the guys that are not talking, and I mean, they don't necessarily have to talk about what it is that's going on. They just need to reach out and have a chat. It doesn't have to be about anything specific. It doesn't have to be about what's going on in your life right now. You don't have to talk about those thoughts. You just have to be around people, knowing that people, that there's people out there that want to help,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Tony, thank you so much. That was a lovely end to that. And what an amazing story in terms of that man you met on a bridge who's now got a story to take into his life, and who knows who he's sharing that with. And I think that's what's so exciting is people being human, showing up, seeing another human being, caring about them enough to make a connection, and seeing where that goes. And that light that you passed on to him, hopefully he's sharing with somebody else now.
I hope so, yeah. That's the thing. And it's just making those connections like you just said now, isn't it? Try and make that connection with someone. And it's not just driving past something that you think isn't quite right. It's maybe going, well, I'm going to be a bit curious here. And that's what that led to. So, it led to being being curious led to then going, oh, okay, he is actually trying to chuck himself off the bridge. So that curiosity, and it helped me as well, because, it's not just, yes, he came and he didn't jump off the bridge, but it equally, it puts things into perspective for yourself as well, doesn't it? That you are going to potentially end up in that place at some stage. You are going to think about committing suicide, but it is just a thought. That's all it is. And you can pay attention to it, or you know what I mean? It's just, I think it's as simple as that, isn't it? That's what I think. But,
yeah, that's the simplicity of it. It really is.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, take care.
Thank you for joining us today. If you've enjoyed the conversation, feel free to subscribe and join me and my new guest next time. If you're interested in the work I'm doing, or you think I can be of service to you or your organisation, please email dave@simplicityofmind.co.uk. Remember, see if you can find time to slow down and reflect. Those simple ideas might be worth listening to. Take care, and I hope you can join me in a couple of weeks.